We do actually have not only Patrick here with us, he's about to share with us his ministry, but downstairs we have somebody speaking and talking about France. Her name is Beth Ann Schaefer. And it's interesting with Beth Ann because she was in the youth group at Tomahawk when I was a youth preacher there. So it's an interesting connection there. She's downstairs sharing with our kids. So, but right now I'm going to go ahead and we'll turn it over to Patrick, and you guys pay attention.
Good morning. Okay, I think we need to practice this just a little bit. I work at Colegio Biblico. Can we say that? Colegio Biblico. It's spelled like college, but you don't pronounce the G, you make it an H sound. So Colegio Biblico. There we go. I think we got it. A few weeks ago, I took a couple of our students over to Colorado for a VBS that they were doing out there. And it was really funny because my students' names were Gerardo and Loami, a married couple. And so every day we had to practice, okay, how do you say his name? I don't know. Gerardo. And Loami, they're not even the difficult ones, you know. So we got several people coming in with really interesting names. Anyway, Colegio Biblico is on the Texas-Mexico border. We are a Bible college. We have a campus on the Texas side and a campus on the Mexico side. Okay, we do that for a very specific reason, because Mexico does not allow international students to study Bible, and so the Mexico campus is more for our Mexican students, because also Mexican students sometimes have a very hard time getting visas to come across to the United States. However, we also have students from all over the Spanish-speaking world, South America, Latin America, the Caribbean sometimes, and different places, and they are not allowed to go to Mexico, so we can't have just the Mexico campus. That's why we have the U.S. campus as well. So we have international students more on the U.S. campus. If that doesn't make sense, that's the government's fault. That's not my fault. But the U.S. actually has been fairly nice to us. The U.S. government has been fairly nice to us about allowing international students. We have to be registered with the Department of Homeland Security, and that's a whole bunch of paperwork that I'm not going to get into. But we are able to have international students on the U.S. side. We generally have between 35 and 55 students between the two campuses. So we're not a large school, but we only do ministry and Bible. We've existed since 1945 because the missionary who started the college, when he went to Mexico, he realized that evangelism is not difficult in Mexico, but there's not a lot of leaders. And so one thing that the churches in Mexico really need was Christian leaders, a way to be trained. We have a lot of Bible colleges in the United States, a lot of different ways to train and learn about how to be a preacher, how to be a minister, how to be a missionary, but that's all in English, just about. And so what we've done is we teach entirely in Spanish. And so when I'm down there, I teach in Spanish. So it's a wonderful program, and I really like it. What we do, because most of our students come from areas that are poorer in the world, we can't charge like American schools charge. Like when I went to Bible college, it was about $275 a credit hour. You know, you take 16 credit hours a semester, and suddenly you've got a lot of money. Everybody who's gone to college recently or sent a kid to college recently, you know what I'm talking about. All right, and then lately, I think some Bible colleges have gone as high as $400 a credit hour. We can't, our students could never do that. So what we do, we consider ourselves a mission. So our students essentially get free tuition, room, and board to come to Colegio Biblico. Now we ask the students, every student works on campus to help the campus run, but we don't get tuition money or room and board money from our students. So it's a wonderful program, and I really enjoy it personally because it means I get to teach people who really want to learn, and essentially free of charge. But because we're free of charge, that's why we're a mission. We're entirely supported by churches. So the school is supported by church donations, and then our professors, especially the professors from the United States side, are supported by missions as well. And because of that, we've been able to stay really focused. A lot of Bible colleges have had difficulty because they need a certain number of students in order to function, because they need students to have tuition money. But we don't function like that. So we only offer ministry and Bible degrees. We don't offer anything else. We don't offer Christian business or Christian education or other types of things that are wonderful degrees, but we're not going to ask the church to pay for that. But we do ask for help with supporting our ministry for training preachers, and that's our training preachers and church leaders. That's our major goal. We've been around since 1945, so we're coming up on 77 years? 77 years? I have not been there that whole time. I've only been there for 8 years now, since 2014. But I really like the school and how it works. We're very heavy on Bible classes, and we have a lot of ministry courses, but it differs from a lot of other colleges because a lot of our preachers, it's really interesting, in Latin America are from churches that are fairly small, that don't have a lot of leadership support because there's just not a lot of leadership support. So a lot of our preachers have to be the preacher, the worship leader, the children's minister, the youth minister, the admin guy, janitor, all the things together. So we have a wide variety of classes. So we have preaching classes, but we also have a youth ministry class, a children's ministry class, a worship leader class. And so everybody gets a little bit of everything. One of the things I really like is our Bible curriculum because we get to offer courses on basically every book of the Bible. And so we have a wonderful program both for Old and New Testament, and that's what I teach in particular. I teach a lot of the 3rd and 4th year, our junior and senior level courses, which I really enjoy. So like this last semester, I was teaching the prison epistles on both campuses in Mexico and the United States. I taught a course on each side. And the prison epistles are Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. And so that was why I was preaching on Ephesians, because it was been on my heart lately, because we've been teaching through Ephesians and teaching through these books that talk about these wonderful issues. And so it's really neat because we get to work through with the students on each of these. So last semester I taught that course. We have 3 theology courses, Theology 1, 2, and 3. And then I get to teach all of those. Our Theology 1 class is on Doctrine of God. Our Theology 2 class is Doctrine of Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And in 3, we get kind of interesting. We do Doctrine of Salvation, the church, and the second coming. Always interesting conversations. And I love teaching those courses. I also got to teach church history. We have 2 church history courses, which are unfortunately not my students' favorite courses, but I really like to teach it because we get to go back through the history and see how things develop, see why things are the way they are, and how they got to be that way, when different doctrines developed, and why they're wrong. No, because if they developed, they're wrong. Yeah, because it means they didn't come from the apostles. So we teach a lot of different courses like that. One of our biggest needs lately is that we actually have very few professors at the moment, especially on the United States side, because all of us who teach on the United States can teach in Mexico as well. But the ones who teach in Mexico cannot necessarily teach on the United States side. So we are limited to 3 full-time professors on the United States side, which usually means I have to teach extra courses because they made me the academic dean for reasons I don't entirely understand, but which means I assign all the courses. So when a course needs to be taught and someone has to teach it, I usually get the extra course. Now, I generally love that, but it really kind of becomes a bit of an issue because I sometimes end up teaching up to 20 credit hours or more a semester, which I should be teaching around 12. So that's one of our major prayer requests. If you could pray, if we could find teachers. We need teachers who can speak Spanish, preferably have a master's degree because that just makes the government happy, and then are willing to raise support for and not get paid. So that's what we really need, at least 1 to 2 more teachers on the United States side in particular. And so, yeah, that's one of my big things. At Colegio Biblico, like I said, our students they receive a scholarship and work study, and regardless of how that turns out, the work study ends up canceling out their tuition, room, and board. And so our students come from a lot of different places, and the thing that I like about it is that our students want to be there. It's interesting. In Mexico, it's difficult to get parents to send their kids to Bible college because parents know that preachers in Mexico make no money. So they don't want their kids to go to Bible college. They'd rather have them have a career, that will provide financial stability. And they definitely don't want their daughters to go to Bible college, and especially not to marry a preacher. Because then they'll definitely never make money. So when we do get students from Mexico and different places, we know our students really want to be there. So it's not the easiest thing to go, even though it is free tuition, room and board, but our students really want to learn. That's one thing that I really like quite a bit. I can do things like say, hey, we're running out of time in the semester, we're not going to be able to finish Philippians, which happened this semester. That's why I'm using that example. Why don't we use this other, we could meet for 2 extra hours and finish it, and they'll be like, okay, yeah, let's meet. Even though that takes away from time to study for finals. They'll be like, yeah, we want to finish Philippians. So that was really fun. I had 3 guys in that class on the US side this semester, and they're the same people who were in the church history class, so it's the same level, so they were going from one class to the other. But one of the guys who was in the church history class was not in the class on prison epistles with Philippians. So, this is a funny story. And he skipped church history. It was a Wednesday, Friday class, and he skipped the Wednesday class on the last week of school so he could work on another paper, which I don't appreciate. You don't skip my class. So, my revenge was Wednesday, we actually finished all the material for church history class, and so Friday, we did not have to meet. So when we were in the prison epistles class, we decided to use the Friday time for church history to finish off Philippians. He wasn't there on Wednesday when we decided all of this and when we finished the class, so he didn't know the class was finished. So he comes to class on Friday thinking it's church history class when it's really Philippians. And I don't say a thing, and neither does anybody else. I just start in Philippians 3 and start talking. And he starts taking notes, looks kind of confused, but he's taking notes. We get about 45 minutes into the class, and finally he looks up and goes, is this church history? And I'm like, no, we finished church history on Wednesday. This is Philippians. He's like, what? He's like, do I have to be here? I'm like, don't you want to learn about the Bible? And he's like, oh, I guess so. So that's why you don't skip my classes. But our students are really, for me, it's the highlight. I really enjoy having our students around, both in class, what we get to teach them, and out of class, because we do a lot of mentoring with our students. They come around, we talk quite a bit. Like when I said we went to McDonald's for ice cream, that's not necessarily an uncommon thing when McDonald's is open and allows you to come inside, which we haven't been able to do lately. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But so it's really nice to have the students. We have a lot of students from Mexico, all over Mexico, different parts of Mexico. We currently have a student from Chile. And if you think COVID restrictions are bad here, you should see the COVID restrictions in Chile. He planned to visit, he just got married to a Mexican girl student December before COVID started. And he planned to take her home to visit his family and everything in the summer. Chile won't allow him to visit. So they planned for this summer, and their airport's still closed, won't allow them to come visit. And in Chile, they're on lockdown, they've been locked down for most of last year, and you can't leave your house without government permission. You can apply for it online, and they'll let you print out a little permission slip, and you can go outside for 2 hours. So, we may not like COVID restrictions here, but let me tell you, it's worse in some places of the world. So I really feel sorry for him. But he's from Chile. We have other students who are from, one student who's from Equatorial Guinea. His name is Wenceslao, and I knew him when he was about this high. He was always a nice kid. I met him selling peanuts on the street. That was his job for his family. He had to sell so many amounts of peanuts and bring home the money each day. But he always impressed me because he was always nice. Now, a lot of the teenagers in Equatorial Guinea were not always nice to me as a foreigner. But he was always polite, he was always nice. He never asked for anything, but he was always a good kid. And one of the things, if you've read my newsletters from before, I'd wanted to bring over some students from Equatorial Guinea so that they could learn at Colegio Biblico, because Equatorial Guinea speaks Spanish, Colegio Biblico speaks Spanish, and I wanted to bring them to Colegio Biblico so that they could learn and then potentially go back to Equatorial Guinea and be church leaders in Equatorial Guinea. And in the spring of 2019, I was able to bring over Wenceslao. I was very excited. He was very excited to come. It's kind of difficult for him a little bit because all of his friends believe that if you go to the United States, you go there to make money. And he's getting a lot of stuff, but like I said, it's not a lot of physical stuff. So he's not making money. Our students are not allowed, because of their student visas, they're not allowed to work off campus. They're allowed to work on campus, and that's it. That's all the government will allow. They're not allowed to work on campus, so they're not making any money off campus. So, but his friends don't believe that. So he's had a little bit of a difficult time. Like, the United States, yeah. So where's our money? They think he should be sharing their money with him. He's like, I don't have any money. So, but I was very happy to bring Wenceslao over. He misses Equatorial Guinea, but he's had a wonderful time here. I was hoping to send him last summer back to visit Equatorial Guinea for the summer, but as you all know, that wasn't possible. I was his sponsor for bringing him over, so I paid for his plane ticket and his visa, and I pay for his books still, and help him out with a little bit when he needs a little bit here and there for spending money. And he has really loved it. It's been difficult because Equatorial Guinea comes from a different type of education system. So they're not used to writing papers, reading textbooks, a lot of that kind of thing. Obviously he can read, but they don't have daily textbooks and things. And he comes to our school, and we have about 1 textbook per credit hour, roughly. So depending on the class, and so you've got about 15 books every semester. And his classes, usually they had to read stuff, but not that much. And definitely not to write as many papers as we have to write, take the tests that we have to take. And so it's been difficult for him to adjust a little bit, especially when everything has to be typed, because we still require everything to be typed and printed. So it's been interesting. He's had to adjust, but he's really enjoyed it. And he's really made an impression. He's helped out with Niños de Mexico, which is a children's home in Mexico. He's helped out with several different churches, and everybody always wants him to come back. It's been very exciting. He comes from, his church in Equatorial Guinea was a Baptist church. There are no Christian churches, Churches of Christ in Equatorial Guinea. But he's come to really love the Church of Christ Christian Church. And one of the things that he's thinking about doing when he graduates in about 1.5 years is going back to Equatorial Guinea to plant a Christian church, Church of Christ. Because he's been in our classes, he's been in our theology classes, we've talked about the doctrine of salvation, he's learned what the Bible says about baptism, and he thinks the Bible is clear. So it's been very exciting to be able to teach him and work with him. He's currently in Iowa, helping out at a church over there. Before that, he was at a church in Arkansas, helping out a church there for the summer. So that's one of the things that's been kind of neat to see all of our students putting everything into practice. Wenceslao has been doing a wonderful job, and our students in general it's been very exciting to work with them. Some students are older than others. A lot of our students, because like I said, their parents don't want them to come to Colegio Biblico, some students are told that if they want to come to Bible college, they have to get a real degree first. That's what their parents tell them. And so they get a degree in marketing or engineering. We've had lawyers, nurses, people who have had careers for a while and given it up to come to Colegio Biblico. So they've had good jobs, they've had a degree, but they come to Colegio Biblico, which impresses me in a number of different reasons. First, because they're willing to give it all up. They know that they're going to give up a good paying job, and they're going to go for a job that probably will not pay them. So we make it very clear to everybody who comes in, everybody knows in Mexico and Latin America, you probably will not get paid as a preacher, or definitely not what a normal person will make at a normal job. But they're still willing to give it up and come. So we've had people quit their jobs, come with their wives, families, little kids sometimes. So it's very inspiring to me that how much the students want to learn. And that's why I really like teaching this group. Sometimes we have younger students too, right out of high school. Usually children of graduates or of preachers are the most common ones to come right out of high school. What we do too is we divide up all of our students to different churches, different local churches. So they do kind of like an internship during the school year at different churches. So everybody gets assigned. So like if we were near here, we would say, hey, there's 3 students here that would like to go to your church. Can you sponsor them? And so they'd come to the church and they'd participate in whatever the church would allow them to do, help out, usually depending on their level and ability and everything. So like at my little church near Eagle Pass, it's a Spanish-speaking church. And we usually have 2 or 3 students from the college with us. Usually when they're in juniors or seniors, we let them help teach more or preach more. And usually freshmen, we let them help out with a lot of different things. But freshmen and sophomores, I usually only let preach about once a semester. Not because they couldn't do a good job or other things, but usually because it takes them a long time to prepare a sermon. And every time I ask the students to preach in church, suddenly for the next 2 weeks, I get more late homework than normal. Which, that's just life. But I had one student, his name is Aaron, and he was at my church. He's 19 years old now. And I let him preach this last semester. And it was very interesting. I love seeing my students preach, and they hate it when I'm in the audience. All my students, and even the graduates, they get very nervous when I'm in the audience. I don't know why. I just stand there looking at them. No, I'm just kidding. But the poor kid, the whole sermon, I'm sitting over there, and then he's standing like this the entire sermon. He doesn't even look at me over on the other side. It was kind of funny. In the sermon, it was, everybody, when they're a new preacher, they're working through things, and everybody's got a different style, and they kind of get a learning curve. It was kind of fun. During the sermon, I noticed that he used a few Spanish words that I don't know, which is not uncommon. I know mostly biblical Spanish and normal Spanish. I don't know a lot of like colloquialisms and sayings and stuff like that, and those get used a lot in sermons. So I didn't think too much about it. But after the service, me, and the worship leader, we were going out to lunch, and he asked, "How did you like my sermon?" And the worship leader goes, "I liked your sermon, but you can't say such and such a word in the sermon." I don't know what the word was. Apparently it's one of the words they don't teach to missionaries. But apparently it came out, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I can't believe I said that." So, you learn. One of the other things was, poor guy, he got a little bit confused in one of his illustrations. So he was trying to talk about a personal illustration about an ex-girlfriend, which is almost always a bad idea. But he was going too fast with his illustration, didn't really explain it very well. He was talking about how he had a girlfriend, and then she broke up with him, and her family moved away, and a couple months later she had a baby. So of course I'm sitting over there, right, and he's not looking at me, but I'm sitting there thinking, "You have a baby?" Because I can do math, So she was your girlfriend, a couple months later she has a baby. We know what happened, So I missed what happened for the next 5 minutes after that, because I'm going, "What?" But you could kind of see it, the whole congregation, he says that, and then we're all going like, and afterwards we're like, "What did you mean by that?" And he's like, "Oh, no," he explained it. It's nothing there. Obviously very innocent, but that's not exactly what you said. So we have little adventures in our training and everything. So that was kind of fun from this last year. COVID has been a very big impact, of course, on our college, because we have not just one set of COVID rules, but two, because we are in Mexico and the United States at the same time. So that has been very difficult, because especially in Mexico, they are much more restrictive than we have been in Texas. Texas, in my opinion, has been fairly reasonable. But on the Mexico side, it was a bit more complicated. In spring of last year, we had to close down the Mexico campus from the beginning of April through the end of the semester. And we tried to do online things with our students, but that's very difficult for us because we don't have a lot of that already set up. And none of us are really techno people. So it was very difficult trying to do. And then we've had to continue it a little bit because they closed the border to Mexican visa holders, tourist visa holders. It's a little bit weird. I don't know what you see on the news or what you don't see on the news, but somehow you probably heard that they decided to close the southern border to all non-essential travel, is what I keep hearing. The problem is that non-essential travel is not really a legal term, so that's not something that can really be judged on the border, but in practice what that means is they've closed the bridges where we are, that cross over to Mexico. They closed them to the Mexican tourist visa holders. So people from the United States don't need a visa to go to Mexico. We can come and go as we please, and we still do. Although what that does for the spread of COVID, I have no idea, but we're still allowed to go back and forth. And if you have a business visa, you can come over. But if you have a tourist visa, you cannot. which has really affected our local economies quite a bit because we have a lot of people that live on the border that go back and forth and do a lot of shopping, buy things. We're very interconnected. But in particular for our school, what that means is that I have 2 or 3 Mexican professors that would usually come over and teach 1 class, 2 classes a week or something like that, that cannot do that now. So to try to adjust for that, because we just don't have enough professors to teach all the courses if we just have us 3. Because I'm one of the professors, and I'm also the academic dean, the registrar, and the director of admissions. And the other professor is the dean of students, and the other professor is the president, and our chief financial officer, and our recruiter, and, well, a couple other things too. So it's difficult to have all 3 of us try to teach all of the classes that we need for a full 4 years of students. So we needed the professors to be able to teach, and so what we did was I tried to make it more of a virtual classroom kind of thing. So we got a big TV and a dedicated laptop and some speakers and stuff like that to try to make a virtual connection. So our students would come to class and the teacher would be over the internet. Kind of the opposite of what they're doing here in schools a lot. The students would stay home, teacher would be in the classroom and teach from the classroom. Our teacher would be at home and the students would be in the classroom. We teach it that way. Not the best way, especially because we don't have the best internet connections on the border on both sides. So we lost probably about 3 or 4 weeks each semester just due to internet problems. So it's not ideal, and we're hoping that they'll be able to fix that soon, but it doesn't look like it'll happen anytime this semester at least. So we're looking forward to another semester of having to do 3 classes that way. So, but we're doing the best we can with what we got. So we just have to push through as best as we can. We have had several of our students and professors got COVID along the way. None at the beginning. It was mostly from this last year. Everyone recovered just fine. No one had major problems with COVID. But we have had several people that did have it. We did put in restrictions on campus. That was my job to decide what restrictions we would put in, which was kind of scary because I don't think I should have that kind of responsibility. But I'm not saying that we did the best. I'm just saying that we did the best that I could think of. So on the US side, I did not require masks in our classrooms because we are a small campus. Everybody lives on campus. Everybody eats together. People share showers, bathrooms. Not at the same time, but sorry, I just want to be clear. And so it seemed silly to me to wear a mask in the classroom when we're just going to take them off to eat together in a couple minutes. So we did not have masks in the classrooms, although we're not opposed to masks necessarily, but I just thought it was silly to have them in the classroom. We did limit off-campus people so that they couldn't come on campus. So normally we would let people from churches come in and visit and do different things, but this time we did not. On the Mexico side, they had the whole last year, they weren't allowed to send the students to churches because most of the churches were closed down. So on the Mexico side, we had a church service on campus, which we normally don't like to do because we want to make it clear that we are not the church. We're there to help the church, help the churches. So we like the students to work through the churches, but at this case, we couldn't do anything because the churches were closed. On the US side, we were able to continue because the Texas churches were open. So we were able to continue the whole last year without any problems sending our students to churches. Yeah, but COVID has been interesting. Not only are there the actual rules, but there's been rumors of rules. So I've had so many people tell me this and that and the other about COVID that may or may not be true, and different rules. Oh, the county's doing this. Oh, no, the judge said that. Oh, we have to do this. There was one in particular that people were completely convinced about, that back last summer, that President Trump was going to send troops into Eagle Pass to enforce that everybody stay in their houses. I don't know where it came from. But this lady forwarded me a whole thing with like seals of like military seals and stuff on it that had this notice, and it was just completely fake. Someone made it up completely for reasons I do not understand. But it wasted my time because then I had to go research it to see if it was actually going to be true or not. And it wasn't. Apparently they were basing it off of a report that President Trump was going to send some troops to help out the hospitals in New York or something like that, and they decided that that meant they were sending them to Eagle Pass to force everybody to stay in their homes. So, We had to find out about that because some students were afraid to come out of their dormitories because they thought the troops were going to come and arrest them. So we had to deal with little things like that, which is not the way I would particularly like to spend my time, but it's just part of the craziness of COVID. The US side now has all the students and faculty have been vaccinated. Not because we required anybody to. The students wanted to. I think it just made them feel better. And then the professors all did as well, because it made the students feel better. And I don't know if the vaccine is going to be a great thing or not a great thing, but it didn't cost me any money, so it's not a problem for me. So the Mexico side, on the other hand, has not been able to do that. The vaccine's not readily available in Mexico just yet. Any questions about COVID? No? One thing, the most negative thing about COVID, or the most challenging thing with COVID for me, is actually a secondary issue. Because of COVID, we've had to cancel most of our, I want to say fiestas, parties, get-togethers, student socials. So we have no social gatherings. We used to have student-led devotions, which we've had to cancel. Most of the churches have canceled their Bible studies, Sunday schools, their extra activities. The restaurants have been closed. Like I said, we went to McDonald's to get ice cream. We can't do that for the last year and a half. And so for a lot of our students, it's just been study and more study and more study. And you can it's been hard because all of the social things that you do to kind of relax have been kind of curtailed. And so that's been really hard for our students. So that's my second prayer point. If you could keep that in your prayers. Things are opening back up in where we are in Texas now, but it's been hard for our students. I could really see it. Grades have gone down over the last year. And I can't blame the students too much because it's just study after study after study after study with no chance to really, usually we have at least 2 social gatherings this semester. And then, students will do things together and their church will have something or other, and just a way to relax. And it's been difficult to find ways to relax for the last year or so for our students, especially because last summer we normally would close our dormitories, but because of COVID we decided not to close our dormitories, which is the opposite of what most colleges did. But it made sense for our school because on the US campus we had about 12 students, and most of them lived in areas that had higher instances of COVID than we had, and most of our students would have to take public transportation to go to them. And then, so sending our students home actually exposed students more to COVID than if they were to stay on campus. So we offered the option for people to stay on campus for the summer, and every single student decided to stay with their parents' blessings because they were in areas that had much, much higher rates of COVID. But it also means that our students haven't been home. This is the students who've gone home this summer, is their first time home in a year and a half. So that's been a little bit difficult for our students as well. A little bit difficult for the campus too, because usually we use the summer to not have students, which means our utility bills and our food bills and everything go down. But in this case, they still stayed pretty high. Now our students work on campus, and they work hard, but that doesn't actually generate any positive income. It just generates negative income for the school. So that was a little bit hard for the school financially. So COVID's been a bit complicated, but Texas has actually been very flexible on a lot of the rules. So that's been appreciative. Mexico, not so much. This semester was pretty interesting. I don't know if you heard about the storm we had in Texas, the winter storm. That did affect us. We lost a week of school for the winter storm. It snowed for like 3 days. Normally in Eagle Pass, Texas, it snows once every 30 years at night, and it's all melted by morning. So none of our systems in southern Texas were made for that kind of weather. So it snowed, everything froze, so we lost power. If you heard about that, we were without power for about 4 days, without water for 5 or 6 days. The water went out. We have no idea why it went out exactly, but when it came back on, we found out that all of our pipes were busted. So we had to turn it off for another couple days so we could fix all of the pipes. So our students had fun times carrying buckets of water around, from where we could get water to where we needed water. all of our students had to move into the married dorms because only the married dorms had heat because they're the only people that had a gas line. Everything else says, we have heaters, but they're like electric, and they're not really designed for that kind of weather. I mean, we think it's freezing when it gets below 50 degrees. So my students wear jackets when it gets below 80. So, which I think is crazy, but they think I'm nuts. I keep the air conditioning up usually from like March through November. So one year I left for Christmas, and when I left Texas, it was 75 degrees. And when I got to my parents' house in Indiana, it was -10. It was a bit of an adjustment. So, but one of my students one time, I was in Mexico, and they thought it was cold because I had the air conditioning on because it was like 85 degrees out. And they're like, it's pleasant. And I'm like, no, it's not. So I had the air conditioning on, and they're like, well, you're just one person, and there's 8 of us. Why do you get to decide what the temperature is? And I said, because my name begins with Professor. And then I said, but I'll make you a deal. You turn all of your homework in on time, and I'll let you decide the temperature. He looked at me and was like, that's not fair. So I can be reasonable. But so the storm really was a big deal. Many of our students had never seen snow before. So that took out a whole week of classes. On the bright side, it's made our summer very much less hot, much more mild. So we've actually got green parts and parts around the state, which is weird. And then the temperature, I don't think it's topped even 110. So it's usually, when I was there in July, it was only 105. So that's like fall weather. So, which I appreciate it because it doesn't make my air conditioner work too hard. It's difficult when you're air conditioner, you're trying to air condition from 115 degrees down to below 80. My air conditioner can't do it. So, but we consider 80 degrees isn't that bad. So, before I go on, is there any questions about Colegio Biblical or what we're doing, our students? No? I've really enjoyed it, working at Colegio Biblical. I never really expected to do so. I expected to go back to Equatorial Guinea. And you all supported me while I was in Equatorial Guinea, remember? And I loved being there. I loved working on the Bible translation. The only problem with being in Equatorial Guinea was that all of my teammates left, and I was there by myself, and it was difficult to work by myself. And so I was trying to find teammates, intended to go back. And then one of the professors at Colegio Biblical called me and said, hey, can you come give a class? You know, it's just a week. We'll do a seminar. And so I came down, and I was the first guest to do it in Spanish. And they're like, oh, you can stay and teach. And I'm like, I'm going back to Equatorial Guinea. I'll give you a semester. So I was trying to find other people. I still couldn't find anybody to go. But I did find that I really liked teaching. I never really knew that I liked teaching before like that, but I really do. I really enjoy talking with the students. I tend to go with the idea that I really encourage people to question, because if you don't know why you believe something, how are you supposed to teach it and preach it to someone else? And if what you believe is true, you should be able to question it in the Bible and go back and look and see what's there, right? So some of my students get on to me a little bit about that. We'll be debating about something in class, and sometimes I do a normal thing, and sometimes I'll try to like play devil's advocate a little bit to make sure that they know what they're talking about. And so I have one student this semester, he was like, well, what about that one verse where it says such and such? And I'm like, and where's that verse at? He's like, it's in the New Testament somewhere. And I'm like, when you find it, we can talk about it. Until then, we're going to move on. He's like, but you know where it is. I'm like, yes, I do. But the question is whether you know where it is. I'm like, you're mean. I'm like, you're going to be a preacher. You're going to have to deal with this. You can't just tell people, oh, you should believe in baptism. Why should you believe in baptism? Well, the Bible says so. Where? Well, it's in there somewhere. That doesn't give you very much confidence in your preacher, does it? So I encourage people to be able to question and learn and figure out where things are and how to defend things. So I really enjoyed that process. I enjoy working with students on that. It was interesting because I didn't intend to stay, but I really started enjoying it, and I didn't find anybody to go back with me to Equatorial Guinea. And so one semester has now led to 8 years, and I've really appreciated it. I like what we do, and it's been very gratifying to be able to work with these guys and talk about how to potentially run a church. And now I've been there long enough that I've got several generations who have graduated while I've been a professor, and they talk to me from wherever they are. And so we get to exchange emails and talk to me. They're like, remember when we were talking in Hebrews and you said this about that and what was that about? And so we get to talk about it again and with their ministries where they are now. And so it's really exciting to see. I've got a student who's planting a church in Tepic in Mexico, and that's where he's from. But Tepic is apparently a city of 600,000 people that I have never heard of before I knew the student. It's on the Pacific coast of Mexico, and they have one Christian church on one side of the city, and he wanted to plant a church on the other side of the city with the help of the first church. And so he's gone down there to do that. He has to do his baptisms out of, well, at least last time I heard, he had to do his baptism out of rain barrels, but they get it done. And that church has been growing, and that's been neat to see, a church in a place that I've never heard of before. I've got one student who has U.S. residency, and so which means he's legally allowed to work in the United States. And he really wanted to go into a master's program. He wanted to learn more. He's a very bright young man. Sorry, I call them all kids, but they're really not, I suppose. That's okay though, it's fair. They call me old, so I don't think I am, but apparently I am mistaken. But he to go into a master's program, there are very few master's programs in Spanish. So he needed to learn English better in order to be able to do that. And so I decided, I told him the best way to learn English is to go to somewhere where they don't speak Spanish. And so I hooked him up with a church camp that I knew in Indiana that had a 2-year internship program. So he went to Converse, Indiana, which is in the middle of the cornfields, literally. Literally, it's out on every side. And so very few people who speak Spanish, just like one or two in the area. And so he learned English very fast. And they also took him on several missions trips, and he learned to help with the camp. He became a lifeguard at the camp. He went on mission trips to the Navajo reservation and also to El Salvador. He actually got stuck in El Salvador during COVID. It ended up extra 3 weeks that he had not anticipated before he was able to come back. But he learned he can now preach in English. He said he had headaches for the entire first 3 months he was there, but he learned it, and now he's in a master's program. So I had to warn him, it's Indiana Wesleyan University, and we've had talks about the difference between Wesleyans and Christian Churches of Christ, so he's prepared. And it was interesting because now he's had a few classes and he's told me, what you said was right. I'm like, that happens sometimes. So, but that's interesting to see. So he's preaching at a Hispanic congregation at the Logansport Church of Christ in Indiana. He's working on his master's program, and he still helps out with that church camp. So there's actually a lot of need for our graduates in the United States as well. There's a lot of places that have a large Hispanic population, and again, the biggest problem is finding preachers who are trained and can preach and teach in Spanish. So there's a great demand on that. Problem is that visas is a big issue, but I'm not going to go into that one. But there is a huge demand for the United States for preachers who can teach in Spanish as well. It was interesting to see what our students do. The student I was telling you about before, who was from Chile, he got married to one of our students from Mexico, and so that's interesting. We don't know exactly where they're going to go. They have 1 more year before they graduate. He's from Chile, she's from Mexico. We don't know if they're going to go to Chile or Mexico, and they've also had a job offer from a church in the United States that's willing to sponsor their work visa. So we'll see. But it's really interesting to see all of these different things that are happening, where the Lord is working and what the Lord has been doing. So especially when students that I remember when they were like here, and now they're graduates and have been preaching for 3 or 4 years, and all over in different parts of the world. And it's very exciting for me. So normally you think, oh, Bible college, that's not exciting. That's boring. I don't want to support a school. But I'm telling you, it's really actually pretty cool. We've got students coming from all over that want to learn, are really excited about learning, and really want to go out and evangelize. We get to send them out while they're learning at the local churches, and then we get to see where they go after that. So I think it's an investment that's well worth it personally. Do you have any questions about what we're doing or anything? No? This semester is looking to be very interesting. The United States campus, since we had some problems with the government and we had to redo paperwork, so we were closed for a few years on the U.S. side to international students. But since 2018, we've been open back up for that. We've had 1 or 2 new students each semester. But this summer, I received more than 15 applications. Now, some I had to reject just because, well, there's some issues. But I've accepted 9 different students to Colegio Biblico this summer. A couple from Equatorial Guinea who wants to come to follow Wences. Visa was rejected the first time. They're going to try again for their visa. A family from Nicaragua who is also, their visa was rejected because it's Nicaragua. It's difficult to get a visa from Nicaragua, but they're going to try in the future. 3 people from the Dominican Republic. And 1 person from Mexico and 1 person from Haiti. So Haiti is a French-speaking country, but they're really close to the Dominican Republic, so a lot of them are fluent in Spanish as well. So we've had students from Haiti in the past. We might have another Haitian student. I just sent them their acceptance letter yesterday. I was very excited about that. So we have students coming from all over that are very interested in learning about Jesus and going back and doing ministry in their own countries or who knows where. So it's very exciting, especially because now our admissions are starting to pick up slowly but surely, and it's really interesting. Last year, we had a student who came in at just turned 18 right out of high school, and another student who came in who is 72 years old. He is a retired doctor. Always wanted to attend Colegio Biblico. He's from Mexico. And so he decided it was time to come. And he decided he's 72 years old isn't too old. And we've actually had older students too. And so he's come and he's learning. That was one of the things that really impressed me when I first came. There was a retired woman whose husband had passed away. And she came as a single lady. She was in, I don't know how old she was, I didn't ask. But I believe she was in her upper 60s, I'm just guessing. I hadn't been in school since she was in high school in Mexico. And it was hard for her because she was with the other single lady students who were much younger, had studied much more recently than she had to relearn everything, how to do all the school system and everything. And she's living with all of these younger students who are much faster in everything than she was because just from time, even though she'd already had a career and children and marriage and everything, but she stuck it out. She went for the whole 4 years. Never complained about anything. It was difficult for her, but she just wanted to learn more about the Lord and help out more in her church. And I still see her on Facebook, and she talks about different things that she's doing. When she first got to her church, she actually was giving her students tests, the youth group tests about different parts of the Bible that looked an awful lot like my tests from when we were in class. But that's another story. So I don't think she does that anymore, but it was kind of neat to see. So, just to recap a couple prayer things, if you could pray for professors for Colegio Biblico, pray for our students. It's been a little bit hard with the COVID season, just for their what do you call it? In Spanish, I would say ánimo. Their morale. There we go. Perfect. Morale. I sometimes forget my English words now. If you hear me start to stutter a little bit when I'm preaching, it's because I'm not saying a Spanish word. It just comes to mind. I'm more used to it. I've forgotten some of the ways how some of the Old Testament characters, I've gotten so used to saying them in Spanish, I sometimes forget what their actual name is in English. That startles me sometimes. But it's still pretty fun. So those are my 2 big prayer requests. If you keep those in your prayer. I'm headed back to Texas to get the semester started. Our semester starts the 30th of August. I'm teaching the history of the Restoration Movement, Hebrews, and both campuses. Intro to College Studies. I love teaching that class. That's always fun. Critical thinking, contemporary theology, Old Testament Prophecy 1, which is the first 9 minor prophets and Isaiah. And I think there's one more, but I forget about it. So if you could keep our classes in your prayers, I'd appreciate that as well. And I just want to say thank you for your support, especially during this last year. I know it's been difficult for all the churches It's been difficult for our college as well, and our finances for all the missionaries, I'm sure. But I wanted to say thank you and how much I appreciate all of your support. I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys, and I appreciate you letting me come and visit too. Because obviously I always love coming to visit. So, thank you very much.
I'm going to ask Earl if you would pray for us in closing. And just a little, parents, please be prompt in grabbing your kids after our prayer. All right, Earl, would you close us in prayer?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the work that Patrick and the staff are doing in Texas and Mexico. And Father, we just pray for your blessings upon them, for your strength. And Lord, we just pray for the students that are there, and that you will give them the wisdom to go out and to be leaders